Eco-Africa offers a monthly snapshot of incidents of an environmental nature that affects the sustainable existence of ordinary people from southern Africa and the continent. For the month of July, let us see how Africa has performed in terms of securing a sustainable natural environment for her people. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals aim to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace and prosperity. But there is concern. The world is off track to meet most of the SDG targets, linked to hunger, food security, and nutrition, which in turn is jeopardizing the overall achievement of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. To reverse these worsening trends, will require investment in the agricultural, fishery, and forestry sectors. A strengthening of the resilience as well as the adaptive capacity of small-scale food producers. And improvements in irrigation and water productivity. To help achieve the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, making artificial intelligence accessible to millions more people around the globe could be a major contributor. More than just connecting people, HIU is also developing technologies that will make AI even more sustainable, as it will use even less energy to transmit even more data. While the world has achieved significant economic growth over the past few decades, this has been accompanied by large amounts of pollution, with significant impacts on human health and ecosystems. Unsustainable human activities, from farming and mining to industry and infrastructure, are undermining the productivity of vast areas of land across all continents. This degradation threatens food security, water supplies and the biodiversity upon which human development depends. Therefore, the 2019 United Nations Environment Assembly passed a resolution to encourage member states to collect data that would enable the tracking progress in relation to the management of natural resources. Following a subdued 2018 and 19 farming season, Southern Africa has a cereal deficit of more than 5.4 million tons this year, which means that an estimated 41.2 million people in 13 Southern African Development Community member states are presently food insecure. A report on the state of food, nutrition security, and vulnerability in Southern Africa urges these member states to move to crop and dietary diversity, through the growing of diversified crops and the consumption of diversified diets. This should include indigenous foods. Irrigation has been the magic bullet for improving agricultural productivity in many parts of the world. But is this exactly what Africa needs to achieve its green revolution? Care should be taken not to repeat the mistakes made by our Asian counterparts, where depletion of groundwater has now become a national crisis. Over 50% of sub-Saharan Africa is classified as arid and semi-arid lands. As a result, there is a huge migration of rural people to cities in Africa due to scarcity of natural resources such as grazing land, productive soils and water lost due to overuse by communities. According to the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, combating land degradation and desertification can only be achieved through combined efforts that include governments, scientists, the private sector and the youth. Soil stores up to 3 million tons of carbon annually. Yet its importance to fight climate change is often overlooked. The UN is therefore encouraging land use sectors to include their efforts to restore degraded soil, with activities such as agroforestry and afforestation, in their nationally determined contributions. Attempts to cool the climate by means of global tree planting programs need to carefully consider the real implications for all of Earth's ecosystems. The right trees need to be planted in the right places. Otherwise, the ancient grass ecosystems of savannas and grasslands with their own irreplaceable benefits to people and other species might be lost forever. Namibia has realized the benefits of a green building industry. Traditional buildings contribute substantially to carbon emissions, waste disposal and energy use. There is therefore an increased demand for more sustainable buildings. green buildings also offer cost savings on utility bills by means of energy and water efficiency. It has lower construction costs and higher property value. And also, green building construction will create an increasing demand for a skilled and trained workforce. The huge furore over plastic pollution might be overrated. The real problem is consumerism. It is much harder to accept the kind of lifestyle changes needed to address the climate crisis, than it is to simply reduce reliance on single-use plastic. Also, we cannot afford to allow the focus on plastic to detract from tackling the challenges that threaten our very existence, such as population growth and climate change. With land claims on the increase and wildlife habitat under pressure, it has become necessary to put aside one-sided views on game farming and hunting. Turning a game farm into agricultural land will result in habitat destruction as land is plowed over to produce food. Herbicides, pesticides and fertilizers will cause damage to soil biota. Erosion will increase and contribute to siltation in our rivers and estuaries. However, if the beneficiaries of a land claim keep the property under wildlife, environmental impacts will be low. Through trophy hunting and non-consumptive game viewing, sustainable futures can then be assured. Robben Island has joined the list of 20 new protected marine sites in South Africa. This is a good start. However, it needs to be followed up with an effective compliance and enforcement strategy. This will require adequate funds, strong community support and well-trained staff. Globally, fish farming is playing an increasingly important role in feeding a growing world population. Fish can be produced more efficiently and cost-effectively than most meat proteins. Despite it being landlocked, Zimbabwe shows huge potential as it owns approximately 60% of all dammed water in the South African Development Community region. The people of Bunyara Kingdom lives in the largest and oldest conservation area of Uganda. They have successfully opposed government's proposal to construct a hydropower dam below the revered Murchison Falls. Citizens from Lamu County, a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Kenya, were overjoyed by the ruling that cancelled an environmental and social impact assessment license awarded to coal developers. The plant would slow the development of readily available, clean and increasingly low-cost geothermal, wind and solar resources, and in addition, the project would make it difficult, if not impossible, for Kenya to meet its obligations under the Paris Agreement on climate change. As 80% of South Africa's primary energy is powered by coal, carbon tax could actually be an effective way of mitigating greenhouse gas emissions. But unless these profits are used to facilitate clean energy generation, the benefits will be limited. This means that reducing carbon emissions will come at a cost, and the benefits may not show for 2 or 3 decades. However, it will be worth the wait. Naomi Klein, one of the climate movement's most influential thinkers, remarks that the fossil fuel industry is increasingly relying on the heavy hand of the government to protect it from competition with renewable energy, as this has become the cheapest energy source worldwide. South Africa, the biggest carbon polluter on the continent, used to be home to the world's fastest-growing renewable energy sector, but government intervention set back these advances. This to protect their own polluting coal interests. She concludes that global fossil fuel subsidies are so large, that if redirected, enough money would be available for investments in clean energy needed to meet the Paris Climate Agreement targets. July 1. Nature magazine reports that the ceiling of 580 gigatons of CO2 emissions per annum to achieve a below 1,5 degrees Celsius warming target is out of reach, as emissions from the existing energy infrastructure already adds up to 846 gigatons. July 3. Dr. Ho-Sung Lee, chairperson of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, sheepishly responds that science had done its job, and it was up to the statesmen and the politicians, as motivated by the activists and the press, to act on the verified data. Now, jump to July the 17th, in response at the UN climate talks in Bonn, a breakaway alliance group of oil-producing nations frantically attempts to erase the science supporting the role of carbon dioxide in climate change. Political pushback came from the small island states, with strong support from nations in Latin America and Africa. But where would South Africa stand? According to the Daily Maverick, our elected leaders entered into a disappointing wait-and-see approach. Considering the share of traditional communities in the profits of mining operations, South Africa continues to show a poor record. It appears that mining conglomerates exercise more control over the government and traditional chiefs, instead of listening to local communities. To get the full stories behind these events, visit our website at econatics.co.za.